Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. Well, today is Friday, so you know what that means? It means it's time for so many questions. Today I'm going to talk about thread. I was asked about thread a few times in the last couple weeks, and I actually just got another question yesterday about thread. So what I'm going to talk about is all the brands I use and what I use them for. I previously made a video about thread weight more specifically. And I just talked about Aurifil thread in that one just to give the example about the thread weight. So I will link that at the end of this video. I'm not going to talk about thread weight in this video too much, other than the weight that I use for the threads that I use that I'm going to go over. But I actually went over pretty much all the thread weights that are available out there in the other video. So I will link that one at the end of this one if you're interested in thread weight. And in that video, I also talk about what needle goes with what thread weight. So if you're interested in that, go check that out as well. Next week, I will be going over needles, specifically machine needles, because I was asked about that as well. So this week is thread. Next week is needles, but like I said, I've already made the video about thread weight and what needle goes with which weight. So check that video out too. Like I said, that'll be linked at the end. All right, so without further ado, let's get started and talk all about thread. So we might as well start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. So we're going to talk about piecing thread. So today, I'm going to talk about, like I said, what I choose or prefer for piecing thread. This does not mean that you have to do what I do. You can use whatever thread you like. I'm not saying that this is the only thread. Lots of you use all different varieties of thread. Use what works for you. So the first thing I'm going to say is that also find a thread that works with your machine. And what I mean by that is there are lots of experts and people out there that will say, every machine will take any thread. No, they won't. And I'm sorry. If you're an expert and you tell people that it's their problem, that they can't figure out how to fix their tension to make that thread work. No, it's not true. I've had so many sewing machines, and some of my machines definitely have a thread preference. Now, does that mean without a bunch of fiddling that I might be able to get a thread to work? Maybe. But why fix what's not broken if you can find a thread that works for your machine that you know your machine loves? Okay, so in regards to my machines and what my machine's like, my starter sewing machine, which I don't have anymore, I donated that to a school, to one of my friends who their nephew's school was starting up sewing again. Yay! Teach the next generation of sewers. They needed sewing machines, so I donated that machine. But that machine, even though it was a Janome, it was a starter Janome, it did not like Aurifil. It did not like Coates and Clark. There were certain things it did not like. What it did like was Gutermann. So I used Gutermann in that machine, and Gutermann can be found at the big box stores. It's definitely a much less expensive cotton thread than what I use now, which is Aurifil. And my daughter sews with this. She loves Gutermann. She uses my featherweight most of the time, my Singer featherweight, and the featherweight loves Gutermann. And the featherweight does take Aurifil as well. But if she likes Gutermann and the machine likes Gutermann, I'm keeping her on Gutermann because I can get it at the big box store, and it's definitely a less expensive cotton thread, but a good quality thread. This is still a very good quality thread. Gutermann is made in Greece. It's a German it's a German company, and I just really like it. So that is a good starter thread if you need to go to Joann's or someplace like that to get your thread. I love Gutermann's, and you can find it on sale quite often, like 30-40% off. So that is a good starter thread. And what I always recommend with thread is that you get a white, an off-white, a light gray, and a black. So if you can only get 3 or 4 threads, I would get those colors for piecing because that'll cover most of your piecing needs. So Gutermann is what she uses, and that is a 50 weight, 100% cotton. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I am, and I don't know a better way of saying this, but a cotton snob. If I'm going to make a cotton quilt with cotton batting or bamboo, which I use sometimes, but it's equivalent to cotton, I'm not going to use polyester thread. That's just a personal preference. That doesn't mean you can't. I know a lot of people who piece with glide thread. But I prefer to make a whole, if I'm going to make a cotton quilt with cotton batting, I'm going to use cotton thread. So and when I'm talking about piecing, I'm talking about cotton thread. And I always use 50 weight for piecing. So that's Gutermann. The kind that I use, like I already mentioned, was Aurifil. And my favorite Aurifil is the 2024, which is the white. I also use very frequently Dove Gray, which is 2600. And like I said, it's always good to have those basic colors on hand. So I keep a black, and I don't have one here in front of me, but I also keep like a creamy color, or a natural color. So that way, no matter what I'm piecing, if I'm piecing black background, I'll use the black thread. And sometimes I'll even use the gray, depending on what it is, because goodness gracious, if I'm doing paper piecing and those stitches are little, I don't think I want to try to see the little black stitches against black fabric and try to pick them out if I make mistakes. So sometimes I'll even use the gray for that. But depending on what I'm piecing, I will choose which color I use. And sometimes it really doesn't even matter. Even if I've had the Dove Gray in my machine and I'm piecing pure white background, it works. I've never had a problem with it showing on the back, because the Dove Gray is a very nice neutral. It seems to melt into almost any color. And that's why I love the Dove Gray and keep that on hand. I do keep white in there most of the time. But like I said, if I have switched to Dove Gray for some reason, I don't bother switching back. The only time I do switch out is like a black. And I will switch out a cream, because if you have a cream in there and you use a super white background, which I do quite frequently, and for some reason the stitches show a little bit, you will see them. It'll look like that place in your quilt is a little bit like maybe it got dirty or something like that. So I won't use cream on white, but the Dove doesn't surprisingly seem to do that. It just kind of melts into the white, which is interesting. But that's just things I found along the way. And I use the orange top or the orange core Aurifil, which is their 50 weight 100% cotton. And like I said, I made the video about the other weights of cotton threads that are available, and I'll link that at the end again so you guys can see the difference, because there's different color cores depending on what weight of thread you're using. But I always use 50 for piecing. And there's a lot of people saying, well, you should use 80 weight for FPP, foundation paper piecing, if you're a foundation paper piecer. I don't. I leave my 50 in all the time. My machine, I use a high-speed straight stitch machine. My machine loves Aurifil. It's the only thread that I can use in that machine that never, ever, ever breaks. I've never had a break. Knock on wood. Now I will. So it works great in the top. It works great in the bobbin. So I always use Aurifil when I piece. Okay, so moving on to quilting. And I will also talk about embroidery too, because I've just gotten into the world of embroidery. If you've been watching my channel, you know I got an embroidery machine. So we'll cover that as well. But let's move on to quilting. So like I said, I'm a little bit of a cotton snob. I don't know if a better way to say it, but cotton elitist. If I'm going to make for myself a cotton quilt, cotton thread, piecing, cotton batting, I want cotton thread as a top thread too. And I've heard people say they don't like cotton thread as a top stitch thread because you can't see it. Well, I beg to differ, because you can see the stitching in this quilt behind me. That is done with a baby teal cotton thread by King Tut. It's 100% cotton, 40 weight. If you get the right weight, you can see the stitching. And it doesn't, by see it, I don't mean like it hits you in the face, but you can see the pattern. And I've had people say, oh, the cotton disappears, you can't even see the pattern. Yeah, you can, because that's my quilt right there, and you can see it. And that was done with, like I said, King Tut, 40 weight, 100% cotton. So that brings me to the thread I like to use, which is King Tut, and it's my favorite thread for the long arm. It's a 3-ply 40 weight, and the way that they make their 3-ply is that it's a long staple, and there's short staple and long staple. The long staple cotton thread is more, what's the word I'm looking for? More stable, more sturdy. It won't rip as easily. It won't break. That's the word I'm looking for. Oh my gosh, you guys, words are escaping me today. It won't break as easily as the short staple. Not very many places use the short staple anymore. Aurifil is long staple. If you get some of the really, really cheap thread, like if you get 10 spools of thread for $5 at like an off-brand, that's going to be the cheapy stuff that's going to break. But it's a 3-ply 40 weight, and when they make this thread, and I actually met the owner of this company, and he told me the whole process, more than I ever wanted to know about thread, really. But as they wind it, they also put it through a flame to burn off any excess fibers, so that way you get less lint and stuff from this when you use it. And there is very little lint with King Tut. So this is my favorite thing for quilting for on the long arm. And this does come in cones, and it does come in smaller spools too that you can use on a domestic machine. But I don't like to use heavier weight than 50 for piecing, so I wouldn't use it on my domestic because I don't quilt on my domestic. I put everything on my long arm. So my favorite colors for quilting is I always keep on hand Temple by King Tut, and that's superior threads, by the way. Temple is their white. I always keep on hand white linen, which is just slightly off-white. If you can see, you can hardly tell the difference, if you can even tell in the video. But this is nice for a lot of fabric designers now. Instead of using a white, they're using off-white. And it's such a slight difference, but if you put the white thread on top of it, you can tell. So I keep the off-white, or the, like I said, the white linen, and it's just a smidgen, kind of more of a natural white, I guess, and this is like a bleached white, for lack of a better term. I keep those on hand all the time. I keep this light gray. It's Canaan. That's the name of this one. And then they have a ton, and this is what I love about King Tut, of variegated threads. I love variegated threads for quilting. So these are some of the colors. They were red, white, and blue. This blues. This one is a really nice one for baby quilts with all the pastel-y colors. But they've got a lot of variegated colors. They've got a lot of solid colors. They've got a whole line, and I keep all of those as well, that are called baby something. So the one I used in the quilt behind me was called Baby Teal, and it was the perfect light teal. It matched the background color of this fabric. So the stitches just, the color blended right in with the background. It's just the perfect color. And they have baby yellow, baby pink, baby blue, baby lavender, baby green, and they're all those light colors. So if you don't want the stitching to like really hit you in the face like some of these darker colors, it's nice to have those light colors where you can still get a color, but they're lighter, so it's not the first thing you see, because sometimes you want the stitching to show and sometimes you want your piecing to show, and those lighter colors are nice to feature your piecing. So that's what I use for the majority of my quilting. Now there's a catch to that. I also use, Glide, and that comes in these large spools and these smaller spools. Now the Glide is a 40 weight, the one I use. There's 40 weight and 60 weight. So I use the 40 weight for quilting, and I use it in both the top. Okay, so I didn't tell you about that. I use this in the top and the bottom, because some people use different in their bobbin than their top thread. I use this in the top thread and the bobbin thread. And this is what I use when I do t-shirt quilts or minky backed quilts, because t-shirt quilts have stabilizer, and minky back quilts use minky that are polyester. And try pulling a cotton thread through a high-speed machine through stabilizer or minky. Tell me your results. It doesn't work very well. You're going to get thread breaks. And that, the first time I tried it, I about went crazy. Nobody had told me that. I had to learn that lesson on my own. So hopefully I'm sharing something with you so you don't have to learn that lesson. It's almost impossible to take cotton thread and put it through minky or put it through a t-shirt quilt with stabilizer and get a good result. And I mean a good result, like a lovely result, and not get thread breaks. Learned that the hard way, unfortunately. So that's when I turned to Glide. Glide is great. It is a polyester thread, so I don't use it on my all cotton quilts, but for the minky backed and for the t-shirt quilts with the stabilizer, it works amazingly and you get a really nice result. The only thing that I don't like about Glide, and I like it for other reasons for this reason, but the thing I don't like about it on quilts and why I don't use it in cotton quilts is because it's shiny. And I don't want my thread to be shiny. I want my cotton quilts for the thread to blend in, right? Sometimes I want the color to stand out, but I don't want the thread to be shiny and then the fabric's flat and then you're seeing the thread more than you're seeing the quilt. But for those t-shirt quilts, like I said, and for the minky back quilts, I feel like this is necessary. And so what I do is I try to find neutral colors that will sort of blend in with I look at the front of the quilt, not so much the back, that will sort of blend in with the front of the quilt. So that way you're still seeing the quilt blocks instead of the thread. That can be difficult sometimes depending on what kinds of fabrics are used. Say there's a lot of black, but there's also a lot of white. Well, what do you do then? Because on the black, you're going to get a lot of white showing up. And on the white, if you use black, you're going to get a lot of black showing up. So then I typically go towards a gray and try to hit that in-between spot, right? But you're still going to see the thread on one of them. So, so that's a little bit of a conundrum, but that's what you deal with as a quilter. So that's what I use the glide for on the long arm. Now, I also use this other thread that I found from Grace, which is where my long arm machine is from. It's called Finesse. It is a 50 weight, not 40 weight, 50 weight 3-ply cotton wrapped polyester. Now what that means is that it has a polyester core, which is similar to this thread here, the glide thread, because this is polyester, but it is wrapped in cotton. So it is stronger like the glide, but it doesn't give you the shiny results because it's wrapped in cotton. The only problem with this thread is I really like this thread. It's also good for t-shirt quilts and minky backed quilts. The only problem I have with this thread is that it has a lot of lint, and that drives me bonkers. But that just means that after every bobbin change, I have to clean out the bobbin area and all those things. So it takes longer to do a quilt with this one. But it is beautiful thread. It works really well. It just has a lot of lint. So just know that most polyester cotton wrapped thread leaves lint. So you're gonna have to deal with that. And this is a 50 weight, so it's a little bit lighter weight of a thread. So it's not gonna show as much as well. So unlike the glide, which is gonna show a lot because it's shiny and it's a 40 weight, this is a 50 weight. It's not shiny because it's cotton wrapped. And so it's not gonna show as much, but like I said, a lot of lint. So pick your battles, right? All right, so I showed you the large spool of glide. Glide also comes in smaller spools, and glide does come in 40 weight and 50 weight. Or I'm sorry, 60 weight, 40 weight and 60 weight. The gray core is the 40 weight. The black core is 60 weight, and I wish I had one here to show you, but I don't. I use the 40 for this size for my embroidery machine. So I have tons of these colors. Lots and lots I've been collecting ever since, well, I used some of them for the long arm, but ever since I decided to get into the world of embroidery, I've started collecting these little spools. And so I have lots of colors to pick from, but this works amazingly well and makes the embroidery designs really pop out. I don't have anything here that I embroidered, I don't think. Oh, I've got a little pumpkin, hang on. Oops, sorry, shook the whole camera. But I made recently these little freestanding lace pumpkins. This is done with the glide, and it is just the cutest. And the nice thing about the glide, because it is polyester and it's so strong, it's able to hold up. So this, I used some water soluble stabilizer, and when I rinsed it away, this is what I had left, and it's nice and strong because it's made out of polyester thread. So it's wonderful for that. Now, I don't use the 40 weight in the bobbin. That machine doesn't like that. I tried it and it was a mess. I got like a nice little, bird's nest, rat's nest, whatever you call them, when I tried to stitch with it on the underneath side of my project, and basically ruined the whole project. So I had to take it off the hoop and throw it away. So what I've been using is pre-wound 60 weight bobbins. And thank you to my friends Stephen and Walter of the Idiot Quilter. They recommended the pre-wound bobbins, and they've been a game changer. They're amazing. I did initially try to wind my own bobbins with the 40 weight. And like I said, not good. Now that's saying that didn't work for me. That might work for you guys, but it didn't work for me. So glide comes in, they have lots of colors in the pre-wound bobbins, and they're all 60 weight. So that's really nice that I can get any colors that I need, but I've been using just white. And like this one, for example, this is the front of the pumpkin. This is the back. Even though it's got white backing, you can see it slightly, but the orange thread wraps sort of around the white a little bit. So I can definitely see that there's a clear front and back to this, but it's not like the white is like jumping out at you, right? So I'm just going to continue using white for all of it, because then I don't have to stock tons of different colors, because you never know which color you're going to use. So that's mainly what I'm doing, is using the 60 weight glide pre-wound bobbins in the bobbin, and then the 40 weights in the top. So Let's see. What other questions can I answer? Let me think. I think that's about all I have right now. So glide for the embroidery, glide for the long arm, 40 weight for the top and bottom bobbin, 40 weight for the top, and 60 weight pre-wound bobbins for the bobbin in the embroidery machine. Like I said, these are all things that I use. That doesn't mean you have to. The finesse and the glide for minky and t-shirt quilts on the long arm, and both in the bobbin and the top thread. And then for most of my normal cotton quilts, I use the Superior King Tut thread, my favorite. Love it, love it, love it. And it comes in so many colors, so many variegated colors, so many solid colors. Couldn't be happier with that. And then again, for piecing, my daughter uses the Gutermann, which is amazing, 100% cotton, really easily available from big box stores. And then I'm using the Aurifil for piecing, 50 weight. All right, so that goes over a little bit about thread. Hopefully that made sense as to why I use, what I use, when I use it. And then, like I said, I will link at the end here the video that I previously made about thread size. And also during that video, I talk about what needle goes with what thread size if you use different thread sizes. Next week, though, I will specifically talk about just sewing machine needles. So look forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget to put your questions down in the comments down below if you have any other topic you would like me to cover, or send me an email. This week's thread and next week's needle question actually came to me via email, but definitely feel free to leave them in the questions below or the comments below as well. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that helped you understand a little bit about what I use and maybe help you decide what to use. This is definitely not a complete comprehensive guide to thread. There's so many threads out there on the market, and you might have another one that you absolutely love. I know that there's, I have lots of other people in the industry or in the quilting world, YouTubers here that use completely different thread than I do, and they absolutely love their thread. So don't be limited to what I've told you, but I hope this is maybe a starter for you, especially if you're new to quilting, new to embroidery, new to long arm. This might be a good place for you to start to try these threads, and then you can branch out from there. Or maybe you've been quilting for a long time and you've never heard of these threads and you might want to give them a try. So that's all I've got for now. I will see you next week for another edition and we'll go over needles. This week, however, this Saturday, I'd love to have you join me right here on my channel live at 5 p.m. I'm going to have a special guest with me, and we are going to be sewing up, and I don't have it right here. Oh, I do, actually. The Tulips Bloom quilt pattern from my friend Tracy Perks of Rope and Anchor Quilt Company. Really excited to make this one. We made her in pieces quilt pattern last month, and I had Stephen on for that, and that was a great time. No, Stephen isn't joining me for this one. I have another gal joining me, so that's going to be fun. So I hope you'll join me live at 5 for this tomorrow, right here on my channel. And until then, I'll see you soon. Keep stitching. Bye.